In today's discussion on the program, we will be taking a look at the financial crisis. Yes, I'm talking about the financial crisis in the financial sector that has to do with the investigation that was conducted recently and, brought about a lot of things. The Central Bank of Nigeria has, with immediate effect, sacked the entire board of directors of Polaris, Titan Bank, Union, and of course, Keystone banks. And the action follows the recommendation of this special report I talked about earlier by Jim Obazee, appointed by President Bola Tinubu in July 2023 to probe the activities of the CBN and the relevant establishments. So the report, this special report now that revolves around a special investigation into the activities of the Central Bank of Nigeria, had accused the immediate past governor of the CBN, which is the Apex Bank, Godwin Emefiele, of acquiring, in his possession, banks for himself through proxies. And the report stated that Emefiele had, used proxies to acquire these banks like the Union Bank, like the Union Bank, yes, for Titan Trust Bank Limited and Keystone without any evidence of payment. And our reporter, Yusuf, actually puts together some report analyzing the situation. Let's take a look.
Central Bank of Nigeria CBN deadline for all bank customers to have bank verification number BVN, the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System registration data show that over 60 million Nigerians now have BVN. This represents an increase of 2.6% from 58.7 million BVN registrations as of September last year. CBN on December 1st, 2023, directed commercial bank, merchant, non-interest, payment service banks, other financial institutions and mobile money operators through a circular that the BVN or National Identification Number NIN attached to all accounts wallet must be electronically revalidated by January 31st, 2024. The circular says that effective March 1st this year, all funded accounts or wallet without BVN or NIN shall be placed on post-no debit or credit and no further transaction will be permitted. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Gas, Ekpo, has stated that the collaboration between the public and private sector is essential in achieving Nigeria's energy security goals. The minister stated this during the Optimera Energy's flag-off construction of gas distribution infrastructure at Lagos Free Zone. The minister explained that natural gas is a critical component of energy mix, offering cleaner and more efficient solution. He added that the development of a 25 million standard cubic feet per day city gate station is scalable to 100 million standard cubic feet per day, along with the necessary auxiliary infrastructure, reflect not only their dedication but also a shared vision for a thriving and resilient Nigeria. In a dramatic move on Wednesday, the Central Bank of Nigeria reconstituted the boards and management of 3 banks, Polaris, Union, and Keystone banks. The Apex Bank statement cited regulatory non-compliance, corporate governance failure, disregarding the condition under which their licenses were granted, and involvement in activities that pose a threat to financial stability.
Thank you very much, Yusuf Akogu, for that analysis there. But to help us understand the situation and unpack some of the mysteries surrounding, the acquisition of this bank by the federal government, we have joining us virtually Bolade Idakolo. He is an economist. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. So there's a lot of talk surrounding the acquisition, the report, and all of that. The ordinary man on the street, the layman, probably does not understand the implication of all of this financial crisis in the financial market as we speak. Could you explain to us what this means and how it affects the ordinary Nigerian?
Actually, when you look at the situation on ground that warranted the sack of the board of these banks, you discover that it stemmed from the special investigation by the special investigation team appointed by the president. And out of the various infractions that were made, you discover that funds that were used to acquire these banks were round-trip funds, were funds that were actually meant for Nigerians that were now carried in active pollution. with central bank team that could not be actually verified. And these are the things that the CBN is very critical about. You need to know the source of funding for banking acquisition from investors. And the source of funding must be clear and unambiguous. But based on the investigation done on these banks, you discover that even the so-called investors could not come forward to present cogent documents to back up the financial transactions that culminated to the purchase of these banks. And these were the reasons why the special investigation is recommending that these banks should be forfeited to the federal government. Because the truth is that if you cannot ascertain the source of fund, it means that the funding must have come within, or there was no funding at all for those banks. And you cannot benefit for where you did not contribute. So these were the issues that necessitated the sacking of this board amidst other infractions that were done by the board of these banks. You can take Polaris Bank, for example. This would be the second situation that Polaris Bank will be undergoing this same situation. Because about 4 or 5 years ago, the central bank injected trillions of naira, about 1.3 trillion, into Polaris Bank. And when it came to the time of sale of Polaris Bank, we discovered that after the final
We seem to be having network issues.
50 billion for a 1.3 trillion inject. They were not giving a leeway to make for this is that could have affected the integrity of the banking sector if the government has not intervened.
Let's talk about the role of the Central Bank of Nigeria, in the regulation of financial regulations in Nigeria. So please, can you give us an overview of what is the role of the CBN in all of this?
The CBN is to ensure that regulations are adhered to by banks. Corporate governance is strictly adhered to. The CBN is to ensure that the banks are afloat and they have the necessary funds to meet their day-to-day regulations.
All right. Are you still with us? The network seems to
regulations are to ensure whatever loans that are being given by these banks are within the financially backed regulations by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So any bank that goes against these infractions as regards insider related loans, as we have seen in time past, is due for infraction related penalties, which can lead in some cases, as we have seen now, to the dissolving of the board of these banks.
So why do you think this is happening? Because you made reference of, what happened. We saw Polaris Bank, I think Sky Bank, way back, and it's happening again. Why do you think this keep reoccurring over and over again? Could it be because these people are not really sanctioned?
Yes, actually, people are taking advantage of the system because when you have the opportunity to make some certain decisions with active insider collusion, then you know that you are going to go away with it. The fact is that when you look at the acquisition of these banks, the people that are the so-called investors wouldn't have tried to take over this bank or acquire it without the help of insiders in the CBN, knowing that some of these stringent regulations will be bent for them so that they will be able to go ahead with the acquisition. It must stop at one point in time. If the federal government failed to stem this tide, it will lead to the complete disintegration of the banking system over the years.
Okay, now tell us the difference between, this bank being acquired now by the federal government. What does this mean? Does it mean that, I have an account with, let's say, Polaris Bank now as a Nigerian, and I'm trying to understand the nexus or takeover, the takeover rather. I'm trying to understand the nexus between myself as an account holder in this bank and the acquisition or the takeover from the federal government. What does this mean? Does it mean that, you know, there's something that will happen to my shares if eventually I have shares with this bank, or it means that, you know, something is going to happen to my money and all of that? A lot of Nigerians want to know what this means.
Actually, this will be the second time Polaris Bank, for example, will be acquired by the central bank based on this decision. So Polaris Bank is not new to this kind of acquisition. And in the previous one, there was nothing that happened to depositors' funds. Depositors' funds were most secured in Polaris Bank then, and I'm very sure it will also be secured now. When banks are acquired or by the central bank or by the government, they ensure that there's enough fund injection to meet depositors' needs. And I do not believe any depositor should panic at all when it comes to making requests for their legitimate funds in these banks. As regards the shareholders, you discover that these three banks in the first place have already been delisted from this Nigerian Stock Exchange. So we do not have active shareholders from the stock exchange that could actually claim to it. But in case a situation whereby a bank that is already in the stock exchange is facing this kind of situation, what happens is that most times these shareholders lose in the scheme of things to enjoy any benefit at all.
So is this a temporary step that the CBN are taking, or is it a total takeover, you know, of that bank without, you know, with the government having having the fact that they have the largest share now, and since we don't know the clear facts of how much shares the federal government own, considering the situation, but then what do you think as an economist? Do you think this is something that they're just doing for the time being and will definitely relinquish it later, or is this for the long haul?
The way that the CBN has taken decisions present, you will see that CBN is acting based on the recommendation of the special investigation audit on these banks. And if it gets to the level of nationalizing these banks, it means that the government, through the central bank and the asset management company, will be saddled with the responsibility of managing these banks, turning it around, stabilizing it for a period, and eventually through credible tenders, get it, sell it to interested investors on the long run. This will take some years to stabilize the bank, increase depositors and investors' confidence in these banks, and eventually it will be sold off. We know that the government really does not have any business owning banks in Nigeria. But when we have this kind of situation, I believe it will be interim measures. And as regards the ownership of the bank, if this bank is nationalized, it means that the government owns 100% stake in it. And when it will be eventually sold, whatever is made will go to the government corpus eventually.
But would that be a smart decision? I mean, if there is one thing we've commonly agreed on is the fact that anything that is more of the federal government, it tends to have a bit of a K-leg to it, and that's why people are pushing for, you know, privatization. So would that be a smart decision for the government to own 100% of that?
The way it is now, what the government first is planning to clear is to ensure that there is no rot in the system. If the government does not take over these banks, it means that it's an enabler of the rot that is already persistent in this bank. So it is important that the government takes over first, ensure that the system of these banks are completely sanitized before presenting them clean to the public for investment purposes. These are part of the sphere of control of the central bank and part of what they have been saddled to do when situations like this arise. It's just that it's unfortunate that when these banks were sold, the due diligence that is expected from central bank were deliberately overlooked so that it could benefit some people in the system.
Okay, so say that the main pillar in the banking system, of course, is confidence. It's a trust. It's everything that has to do with, public's confidence in general. Now that this has happened with the sacking of the board members of 3, and then the acquisition or the takeover by the Central Bank of Nigeria or the federal government, what does this mean for the banking sector or the financial market in Nigeria? Because what are the odds that it will not breed distrust in our banking sector?
I do not believe that this move will bring distrust in the banking sector. Instead, it will make the public to have more confidence in the system, that the government is not going to sit by and overlook infractions and allow it to continue. We have seen that previous takeover by government has not led to any depositor losing his funds. So I believe that based on the previous experience of past years, depositors and the public will not have any cause to doubt or to fear whether this bank will collapse or have any doubt about the strength of the financial sector. Presently looking at the new capitalization guidelines that will soon come on board to ensure that our banks are stronger and they are able to participate deeper and stronger in the economic sector to bring prosperity to the country. So these measures are important and are strategic, and it is very, very pertinent that they are taken now before the news that the government is now acting on has been on for long. It's just unfortunate that the previous administration put a deaf ear or blind eye into what has been going on in the system. It's not as if Nigerians are not aware that these acquisitions have killed, but it's just because the government or the people that are supposed to have decided to overlook it or pretend or kept quiet about it. So the government taking the right steps now, I believe, will instill more confidence in the system, and it will make the people believe more.
Okay, what about investors' confidence now?
Waking up to their responsibilities.
Being the giant of Africa, a lot of financial transactions, a lot of other African countries look to invest in Nigeria. And I believe that, as teaching time says now, I'm doing the right thing at the right time. But a lot of people might argue that this is not doing the right thing at the right time, because you also mentioned that this rot has been going on in the system and the previous administration have paid deaf ears to this happening. Now, what happens if some of the investors are kind of skeptical about investing if something like this could be swept up under the carpet for a very long time?
I believe that Nigeria is not averse to legitimate investment and legitimate investors. Nigeria is a very good market for investment that will yield very positive returns and bring profit to investors. Nigeria needs to keep its house in order. Nigeria needs to show the world that we are fighting corruption wherever it is seen. Because anybody that is bringing his funds legitimately into Nigeria's economy wants to be sure that he is able to recover or recoup his fund or repatriate it back to wherever it is coming from. You discover that when these so-called investors were asked to come and show proof of funds that they are brought forth, they fail to bring the proof. So that means that there is suspicion about the source of funding. So the issue is that for every legitimate investor in Nigeria's economy, I do not believe that they will be panicking when it comes to the situation where the country is regulating its financial system to make it optimal for people to have confidence. For some people that might feel that this step is because you can.
All right. I don't know if you're still with us. There's just this one question I wanted to ask before we let you go, which is the fact that if we all agree that this special investigation opened a whole can of worms, but yes, it opened a whole can of worms that brought us to a lot of revelations. And one thing that I wanted to ask was, what the financial law is on these people, because just getting these people off their position, taking away their position shouldn't be the only punishment these people get. So as an economist, could you tell us, a financial expert, what does the law, the financial law and regulation says about the punishment, the sanctions that should be impended on these people?
When we have a situation whereby there is a financial round-tripping or a regulatory malfeasance, as we have seen in this situation, the recommendation should go further than only removing the board and the management. The individuals involved as well should be investigated to know their level of culpability and face financial crimes that could have been assigned to them based on their active participation. So I know that there are stringent laws as regards financial impropriety in Nigeria that could lead to jail terms and assets forfeiture on the long run. So the key actors in this situation, whether Nigerians or foreigners, are not expected to go scot-free if it is established that they were involved in any fraud whatsoever.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Bola Tinubu, an economist. Thank you so much for giving us your take and review on these situations.
Thank you for joining.